Hi, I'm Heather Hocker, President and CEO of the Lubbock Symphony Orchestra, and this is Clef Notes. I'm excited to introduce you to our musicians, guest artists, community members, and patrons who for 80 years have developed a love of music through your Lubbock Symphony here on the South Plains. Joining me today is Lubbock Symphony Orchestra cellist Alejos Anaya. Alejos is also the director of the Symphonic Orchestra of the Lubbock Youth Orchestra, director of the Lubbock High Orchestra, and conducts for Moonlight Musicals, and is also involved with the Lubbock Civic Orchestra. What have I left out, Alejos?
You pretty much got all the things there, Heather. And by the way, thank you so much for inviting me in here to speak with you. It's going to be a great time. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, I think playing some regional orchestras around town here. I'm the personnel manager also for the Big Spring Symphony Orchestra as well, and I play with them as well. So it can be quite a busy slate in the middle of all of the things in the academic calendar. But thankfully, the summer is upon us, and that is going to offer some reprieve for a couple of months before we get started again in the fall.
Well, you're busy. You're not just sitting around doing nothing these next couple of weeks. What are you working on this week?
That is true. The madness has not quite stopped quite yet. I'm currently conducting, and you mentioned a little bit that I do work with Lubbock Moonlight Musicals. I'm very honored and grateful when they asked me to help them out there. And these past few weeks, we've been working on Frozen, the musical, the Disney musical, and we will be giving our last performance tonight, Saturday evening at 8 p.m., and that's going to be at McKenzie State Park. So anybody that has the opportunity to do that, to enjoy that show, will have a lovely time.
Yeah. The amphitheater out at McKenzie Park is always a beautiful venue and just a great place to be. Share with our audience your background and how did you decide that you were going to play the cello?
Okay, well, it's a long story, but I'll just give the highlights here. So very fortunate to be born here in Lubbock, Texas. I know it's probably popular for the younger generations, and it was for me as well growing up to do the whole, Lubbock is, it's so isolated and separate from everything else, and I feel so far away from everything else and I want to leave. But I feel so happy and lucky to be in such a wonderful community, and I could not be happier. So yes, I am here, born and raised Lubbock, Texas. Happy to be here now. And the first thing that came to my mind when you said earlier, when you were making your introductions, was I remember just as far as symphony music is going, and this isn't how I started, but I remember I was already playing in orchestra and at Hutch Middle School with Larry Garrett as a director. And I had occasion to go, my private cello teacher, Christina Newton, had encouraged me to go see some Lubbock Symphony performances. And she is such a wonderful teacher here in town. I love her so much. She's probably more responsible for a lot of the musical things that I've done than almost anybody. But I remember Lubbock Symphony was playing The Pines of Rome. And I had never heard it before. I'd never heard of it. I was like, what's going on here? And I distinctly remember don't be upset, Heather, because I know it's not encouraged, but we would get the tickets to come in for students. And then at intermission, we would move up to any unoccupied seats towards the front. This was back in the Civic Center.
I love that though. And that still needs to happen today because I love seeing the floor of the orchestra completely full in Buddy Holly Hall. So I don't object to that.
Excellent. And it was worth it too, because I remember distinctly sitting in the first or second row looking up at George Strom, who was the conductor at the time. And I swear he was bent, arched backwards the other way, the way that humans aren't supposed to be able to arch back, and conducting the finale. And of course, many of your listeners will be familiar with how this movement ends, the fourth movement of Pines of Rome. Yeah, the brass, the antiphonal choir in back of you. And I had no idea what that even was. I was like, what? There's these brass players behind me. I was a goner from that point. It was just like, what is this feeling? I this isn't necessarily happiness. It's a kind of joy mixed with, exaltation. It's such a crazy, almost a sacred feeling that you get here with music. And that was probably one of my first times to really just have the full body experience of that. And so that hooked me for Lubbock Symphony, from a very young age.
Try marching to it.
Oh my God.
Because I marched to Pines of Rome in high school, I think my freshman year.
I've had many people say that they've done it.
Oh, so much fun.
What a piece.
I mean, what a piece. So,
what did you march?
I marched at Westfield High School with a bass clarinet.
Wow, very impressive.
If you can imagine that back in the day.
I can imagine that. I can.
Yeah. Crazy time, and just really developed my love for music and appreciation. I much better on the administrative side than on the performance side. But this
that's
isn't
just
about me. This is about you. So.
Well, and it just goes to show how experiencing the actual pieces of music, it's the kids don't need the kids. I say the kids. We were kids back then, I guess, but we don't have to necessarily dumb the music down for them. I think even the youngest children really understand deeply, the most complex music that we have, and maybe not intellectually, but the feeling that it gives them, they're attracted to that immediately.
Well, in all the different genres of music, you don't have to just like one genre. I mean, it runs the gamut of country and classical and rock and 90s. And I love having a 20-year-old who appreciates all types of music, and it just depends on her mood as to what she's listening to.
Exactly.
So back to sixth grade at Hutch.
Oh, sixth grade at Hutch.
So that's when you selected the cello, or did someone say?
I selected the cello even earlier than that.
Okay.
Back then, we had in Lubbock the middle school system, which was the middle schools, the junior highs, which were 7, 8, and 9.
That's true.
So the elementaries were 1 through 6 at that time, and so in the 6th grade, I remember another important figure in my development is still, just like Christina Newton, still a valued member of our musical community. Mr. Boyce Wyrick, he was tasked with going to the different elementary schools and starting the beginning strings in all of these. And I think he took over from Mr. Aleman, if I'm not mistaken, but it boils down as simple as this. I wanted to play an orchestra because my older sister, Angela, had played the violin the year before me. And I wanted to do orchestra because it had always been something, this was before the Puns of Rome incident, but it had always kind of, intrigued me. It was a
fun thing to do.
Yeah, I would see
it was the cool thing
the
to
sixth
do.
graders with the cello and then the case and with the bow thing, and it looked like a sword. And I was like, wow, that is the coolest instrument. It's got 2 swords. And so I was kind of wanted to play that the one that wasn't so small. Of course, my sister played that. So, but it all boiled down to one day when Mr. Boyce Wyrick came into the Rush Elementary cafeteria and had all the 5th graders, the 6th graders for the next year, hold up our left hands in the air. And there must have been at least 100 of us in there. And he just went down, split second, violin, cello, violin, bass, viola. And he would just look at your finger. And I was like, please, I didn't even really know what it was called. I was like, I want that middle instrument. And he said cello. And that's the one I wanted. And so I was like, there's my sign. I'm going to play the cello. And I think what was funny is I probably would have played the violin or viola had he said that. And I kind of didn't want to. I kind of always felt drawn to the cello. So I feel very grateful that he did say cello and I didn't have to have any internal conflict. And I was able to do that. And in 6th grade year, it was lessons twice a week. And it was very traumatic for me because I broke my cello twice my 6th grade year. And so I couldn't practice. I even remember I was working on Home on the Range at home. Aww. And it was the first time with flats. And I put my cello down. And then, of course, my parents didn't know anything about the cello either. So it had this end pen when you put it down and it goes up and you can't see it. So, of course, my dad walks by and he breaks the bridge. And I'm like, no. And I've got to wait for a cello. And then I get another cello. And then that cello ends up, the seams come off on that one. And so it was a very traumatic year, but I made it. I persevered. And starting at Hutch in 7th grade, that's really when everything just took off. And
is that when you went into the youth orchestra?
No, I was just kind of squandering. I wouldn't say squandering because the programs at Hutch and the public schools here in Lubbock are wonderful programs. But as far as with extra incentive outside of school, so I was in orchestra having a great time. And it was Christina Newton, my private cello teacher, in my 9th grade year. So it was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I was
mastering the
trying
cello.
To as much as I could. And then she encouraged me to try out for the symphony, and we worked really hard on that audition. I was so scared, and I ended up making it my freshman year into the top group. And I have never been more petrified. My first rehearsal with the youth orchestra. I remember they sat me next to some senior. Her name was Brooke, and she was a senior, and I was a freshman. So I was so intimidated, so scared, and I just remember her being so nice to me. And she's like, "You're doing fine." I guess I must have been obvious how nervous I was because she had to look over at me, after a few minutes in rehearsal and say, "You're doing fine. It's going to be."
And
great.
Now you conduct that orchestra.
And now I conduct that orchestra, and there's no way I would have seen that in back then. There's no way I would have seen.
Wasn't on your dance card back then.
It was not on. It was not on that card at all. So not very circuitous route, I'd say, because once I got the bug of liking orchestra, it's just always what I wanted to do. Even in high school, I didn't really think about the future a whole lot. And I was like, okay, I really like this cello thing, this orchestra thing I'm doing. And my grades were fine in high school, not Dean's List worthy necessarily, but mostly A's and B.
You're at
All
Lubbock
A's and B's.
High.
Yeah, it's a very challenging environment, and
Yeah.
it was great. But I never really thought about, my family wasn't a big college going family initially. My sister did go the year before I went, but again, a year older as the first one.
She stay here at Tech?
Yeah, she was studied at Tech as well.
And then you decided to go to Tech?
I didn't even really decide to go to Tech. I was just graduating, and I was like, I guess I got to go to college now. And nowadays people know what they're going to do 3 years before they leave high school, but I was
not
just like,
necessarily, but
well,
it
at
seems
least
like it.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And then at least the students that I work with at Lubbock High, they all seem like they've got it way more together than
They got
I
a
did.
lot of goals ahead of
They
them.
really
don't
do.
they?
I did not, and so I was like, well, I guess I'll just go to Tech. I'm in Lubbock. Texas Tech is right here, and I like to play, so maybe I'll go to music. And really, it was not more complex than that. I just kind of kept doing what I love doing, and
So fast forward, how
Yeah.
did you decide? I mean, you graduate from Tech,
yeah.
and then you go off to Austin for a few
Yes, go to
years.
Austin. I had
And
a-
how did you decide that education was the direction you were going to go, and how you were going to start changing the lives of the next generation of musicians?
I don't think it was the choice to actually change lives. I don't really think it was anything like that. I think you kind of just look back on yourself or look back on what you've done. You're like, oh my, this is what's actually been happening. I've always had an affinity, obviously, for music and for the cello, but also teaching or explaining things. If somebody is struggling with something that I know how to do, it's always been second nature. So I've just taken any teaching opportunities I've had. When you're student teaching, I student taught in Austin Westlake with James Edwards, who since retired, lives in the DC area. And that was such a great experience. The orchestra that semester won the honor orchestra in the state of Texas. And so I kind of got to see what it looks like when a group is that successful. But yeah, even then I taught a lot of sectionals. I taught a lot of one-on-ones. And when you pride yourself on seeing the progress that a student can make in an hour or 30 minutes or however much time you have with them, that makes you feel good. And it's progress, and big things happen when you do a lot of small things, successfully. And so there was something very attractive about that. And so I loved it in Austin so much. I stayed there and taught there for 5 years. I taught middle school. I did have a high school offer, so that was kind of a big choice for me. I got the advice to stay with middle school, and so I taught in Austin for 5 years. I love the city of Austin. It's a great place. Not as great as Lubbock, but even at the time, you may have convinced me to say otherwise, but definitely not now. But I did love my time in Austin, and when I got the call from Lubbock High, my director Robert Minicky, when I was in school, he was retiring, and they called me up, and initially I was like, I'd always wanted to come back to Lubbock High, in my heart, and I just felt that maybe that wasn't the time, and so initially I was like, no, I'm very happy in Austin. And thankfully for me, they were persistent enough, and they kept asking me to come in and interview. And so finally I relented, and it was one of those things that, when you step in, I stepped into the school again, and I had the interview, and I was like, okay,
It's a special place.
Right. It really is. Lubbock High is such a beautiful campus. And of course, it's the people that really make it what it is. But I just couldn't say no when presented with the opportunity. So yeah, here I am. I said yes.
We're going to take a break right now, and we'll come back, and Alejos Anaya will continue the second half of this conversation. A special thank you to our producer, Rachel Boyd. You can find the Lubbock Symphony Orchestra on social media. And to purchase tickets, visit our website at lubbocksymphony.org, and be sure to download Classical 105.7 app so you never miss an episode of Clef Notes. Make it a great day.